You know, one of the great curiosities of life is this. People don't lose their potential in one dramatic moment. Oh no, they lose it quietly, silently, a little at a time. Not because they choose failure, but because they never notice the habits that lead them there. And that's what I want to talk to you about today. The habits you don't see, the ones that live in the background, the ones you call normal, harmless, nothing serious, those are the real thieves. Those are the ones that steal 10 years while you're busy saying, I'll get to it tomorrow. Most people don't collapse their chances overnight. They drift. And drifting is dangerous because it feels comfortable. It feels familiar. It feels like you have time. But ladies and gentlemen, time is not fooled. Time will reveal the truth. And the truth is this, your life doesn't change when you discover some secret formula. Your life changes the day you uncover the quiet habits that have been holding you back. You see, the average person thinks failure comes from one big mistake, but that's not how it works. Failure is subtle. It's the small things you let slide. It's the easy choice repeated. It's the promise you said you'd start next week for the last 30 weeks. Failure is so polite that you don't even recognize it when it walks into the room. But success is loud in its results, even if it starts quietly in your daily disciplines. And that's why I call these silent habits. Because they don't raise their hand and volunteer. They don't warn you. They work in the dark. And if you're not careful, you will wake up one day and wonder why life looks the same as it did last year, or 5 years ago, or 10. So today, I want to help you shine a light on these silent habits. 7 of them. 7 behaviors, Jim Rohn would say, are guaranteed to keep you in the crowd, keep you average, keep you wishing instead of winning, unless you catch them early and change their direction. And once you see them, really see them, you can't unsee them. That's the gift. That's the turning point. That's the moment when the quiet drift stops and the path of intention begins. So let's start this journey. Let's uncover the first silent habit, the one most people live with for decades without realizing it's costing them their future. It's called the someday syndrome. You know, if there were ever a silent habit that robbed more people of their dreams than any other, it would be this one, the someday syndrome. And it sounds harmless at first, doesn't it? Someday. Such a gentle word. It doesn't argue. It doesn't shout. It just whispers, later, later, you've got time. But let me tell you something important. Later is one of the most dangerous words in the English language. Later has stolen fortunes. Later has stolen health. Later has stolen marriages. Later has stolen entire lifetimes. Jim Rohn used to say, someday is not a day of the week. And he was right. Most people are waiting for a day that was never put on the calendar. They talk about the business they'll start someday, the body they'll build someday, the money they'll save someday. They carry their dreams like luggage they plan to unpack one day when things are just a little more convenient. But here's the trouble. Convenience rarely shows up on schedule. Life doesn't send you a perfect moment. It sends you moments to decide. And let me give you the truth in plain language. Nothing happens until you decide. Nothing. Not goals, not growth, not change. You can wish, you can want, you can hope, but life doesn't respond to wishes. Life responds to action. And action only happens when someday becomes today. Most people don't see the danger of this habit because it feels responsible. It feels patient. It feels like you're thinking things through. But there's a difference between planning and postponing. One builds the future, one delays it. The world is full of people with beautiful plans kept in dusty notebooks. The average person will say, I'm getting ready, but they've been getting ready for 20 years. Preparation without action is just extended procrastination. The problem with someday is that it always feels safe. It removes the pressure to begin, but it also removes the possibility of progress. And here's the quiet tragedy. The longer you wait to start, the harder it becomes to believe you ever will. The mind starts creating clever reasons why now isn't the right time. You lose courage first, discipline second, and opportunity third. But I'll tell you what the exception will understand. You don't start when you're ready. You start so you can get ready. The habits that change your life don't begin next week. They begin the moment you break the habit of delay. So how do you defeat the someday syndrome? You put a date on the calendar. You turn intention into appointment. You declare, this begins Monday, or this begins on the 1st, or this begins today. A date creates discipline. A date creates direction. A date forces movement. Without dates, life becomes one long stretch of unfulfilled potential. And remember this, every transformation begins the moment you stop pushing your dreams into the undefined future and start pulling them into the present. The day you stop saying someday is the day your life begins to change. Now, once you've conquered this first silent habit, there's another one waiting right behind it. And it's sneaky because it looks like improvement. It feels like growth, but without the right approach, it leaves you stuck exactly where you started. Now, the second silent habit is one the modern world suffers from in record numbers. I call it learning without doing. And if you've been around personal development long enough, you've surely met someone, maybe you've been someone who falls into this trap. It's the habit that looks like progress, sounds like progress, even feels like progress, but produces absolutely nothing. Jim Rohn used to say, what's easy to do is easy not to do. And learning is easy. You can read a book, you can watch a video, you can listen to a podcast, you can attend a seminar, you can take notes, highlight lines, underline entire chapters. Oh, I've seen people with notebooks that look like art projects. They collect information the way some people collect souvenirs. But knowledge by itself does not build a better life. Action does. You see, there's a very subtle danger in learning without doing. It creates the illusion of growth. People say, oh, I'm working on myself. But working on yourself means doing the work, not just studying the blueprint. Imagine someone buying a cookbook, reading it every night, memorizing the recipes, even highlighting the ingredients, but never stepping into the kitchen. They'd starve with a library full of gourmet knowledge. Most people are information rich and execution poor. They sit in the front row of every motivational event. They nod their head at every principle. They say, that's so true, that's exactly what I need. But the minute they walk out the door, life goes back to normal, the notebook closes, and so does the opportunity. Now let me tell you why this silent habit keeps people average. Because it trains the mind to feel rewarded before anything is accomplished. The brain gets a small sense of satisfaction from learning, so it stops pursuing transformation. Knowledge becomes a substitute for action. And that is a very comfortable place to stay. Comfortable but costly. Jim Rohn had a phrase I've never forgotten. He said, you cannot hire someone to do your push-ups for you. That means no one can build your discipline, your character, your habits, your wealth, or your future. You can learn the theory, but someone still has to do the push-ups. And that someone is you. Now, learning is valuable, essential. But learning should always serve action. So let me give you a small practice to break this habit. Every time you learn something new, ask one question. How can I apply this within the next 24 hours? Not next week, not next month, within a day. Turn knowledge into movement. Turn ideas into decisions. Turn inspiration into behavior. Because here's the truth. A little knowledge acted upon is worth infinitely more than a library full of wisdom that sits on the shelf. And once you begin treating learning as a tool instead of a trophy, you'll feel the shift. Now, after the someday syndrome and learning without doing, there's another silent habit, one that damages your life in the smallest, quietest increments. A habit so subtle, most people don't even recognize they're doing it. But it shapes character more than anything else. Now, the third silent habit is one that almost never announces itself. It doesn't shout. It doesn't threaten. It simply waits. And slowly, quietly, it erodes the most important thing you'll ever possess, your ability to trust yourself. I call it the habit of breaking promises to yourself. Jim Rohn used to say, the smallest disciplines practiced every day start a revolution in your life. But the opposite is also true. The smallest neglects practiced every day begin your decline. And nothing begins the decline faster than that silent moment when you tell yourself you'll do something and then you don't. Think about it. You say you'll wake up early and you don't. You say you'll save a little money and you don't. You say you'll exercise, read, study, clean up your diet and you don't. Now the promise seems small, almost insignificant. Who notices? Who cares? But someone does notice. You notice. And each time it happens, a tiny piece of confidence slips away. Breaking promises to yourself is dangerous because it never feels dangerous. It feels normal. It feels not a big deal. But here's the hidden cost. Every broken promise rewrites your identity. You go from someone who tries, to someone who hopes, to someone who explains, to someone who doesn't believe themselves anymore. And that's the real loss. When you lose trust in your own word, you lose the momentum to pursue anything meaningful. You start negotiating with yourself. You start lowering the bar. You start accepting less, not because you can't do more, but because you've taught yourself not to rely on your own commitments. The average person lives in this cycle for years. They set goals with enthusiasm, break them quietly, and then wonder why their confidence feels weak. But confidence doesn't come from shouting affirmations into a mirror. Confidence comes from evidence. It comes from proof. It comes from seeing yourself do what you said you would do, especially when it's inconvenient. Jim Rohn had a wonderful phrase for this. He said, if you promise yourself something, you must do it, not because the world is watching it isn't, not because someone will judge you, they won't, but because your character depends on it. Your future depends on it. Your identity depends on it. Let me give you a simple rule to break this silent habit. Make smaller promises. Promises you can keep. Promises so clear and so simple that you have no excuse to abandon them. 5 minutes of reading a day. 10 minutes of exercise. 1 paragraph in your journal. $1 saved. 1 healthy choice. Small disciplines practiced with consistency build the foundation for extraordinary results. Once you prove to yourself that your word means something, even in small ways, you begin to trust yourself again. Then trust becomes discipline. Discipline becomes confidence. And confidence becomes momentum. But if breaking promises to yourself is one of the most destructive habits, the next silent habit might be the most deceptive. It doesn't sound harmful. In fact, it often sounds intelligent, but it quietly destroys responsibility and replaces progress with a very convincing story. Now, the 4th silent habit is one of the most persuasive habits a person can develop. It feels intelligent. It sounds reasonable. It even gets sympathy and agreement from the people around you. But make no mistake, this habit quietly destroys progress. Year after year, without raising its voice, it's the habit of explaining instead of executing. Jim Rohn used to say, excuses are the nails used to build a house of failure. And every time you give an explanation for why something couldn't be done, you add another nail. You see, people who stay average aren't lacking talent. They're not lacking intelligence. They're not lacking opportunity. What they lack is responsibility. Responsibility is the great divider. It separates those who rise from those who remain. The average person becomes an expert in explanation. They can explain why they didn't start, why they didn't finish, why today wasn't the right day, why the timing was off, why the market was slow, why the boss was unfair, why the family didn't support them. They've built an entire vocabulary around avoiding the truth. Nothing happened because they didn't make it happen. And here's the tricky part. Explanations sound so reasonable, don't they? They sound logical. They even feel honest. But explanations do not create progress. They only create comfort. And comfort, when used incorrectly, becomes a slow death of ambition. There's an important distinction I want you to understand. Explanations remove pressure. Execution removes limitations. Explanations keep you where you are. Execution takes you where you want to go. You can't argue your way into success, but you can work your way there. And work always speaks louder than words. Jim Rohn gave us a simple philosophy. You cannot change the wind, but you can set a better sail. That means life will hand you storms. It'll hand you inconvenience, difficulty, distraction, disappointment, but none of those require an explanation. They require adjustment. They require action. They require you to say, given the circumstances, what can I still do? Not, why couldn't I do it? And here's the quiet danger of explaining. Every explanation transfers your power somewhere else. You hand it to the weather, to the economy, to the circumstances, to the past, to the people around you. And once your power leaves your hands, so does your potential. The few who succeed understand this. Never explain away your responsibility. So here's the practice I want you to adopt. It's simple, but powerful. The next time you start to give an explanation, stop mid-sentence. Replace it with one question. What adjustment can I make right now? Not next week, not after the mood changes. Right now. Because progress begins the moment excuses end. Now, once we understand that explaining is simply disguised hesitation, the next silent habit becomes clear. It's another behavior people don't label as dangerous, but it quietly shapes every financial decision, every opportunity, every long-term outcome. Now, the fifth silent habit is one that affects almost every household, yet very few people recognize it as a habit at all. It's the habit of being casual with money. And let me tell you, this one doesn't destroy your life dramatically. It destroys it quietly. It works in small increments, $5 here, $20 there. One impulse purchase, one careless moment at a time. Jim Rohn used to say, the same wind blows on us all. What matters is the set of your sail. And nowhere is this more obvious than in the way people handle money. The average person is not poor because of the economy. They're not poor because of their job. They're not poor because of taxes or circumstance. They're poor because they've never developed a disciplined financial philosophy. Most people don't treat money with intention, they treat it with emotion. If they feel good, they spend. If they feel stressed, they spend. If they feel bored, they spend. And if they don't feel anything at all, they spend anyway, simply because spending has become an unconscious pattern. Money responds to order. Money responds to clarity. Money responds to plans. It does not respond well to mood. And when you are casual with money, money becomes casual with you. It comes casually and goes casually. It arrives without purpose and leaves without explanation. And you end up living month to month, hoping something changes, but never changing the behavior that created the struggle. The average person says, I'll start managing my finances when I make more money. But that's not how it works. If you can't manage $100, you won't manage 1,000. If you can't manage 1,000, you won't manage 10,000. Money doesn't create discipline. Discipline creates money. This is why you see people win lotteries and lose everything. Their income changed, but their habits didn't. They got rich for a moment, but stayed poor in philosophy. Jim Rohn had a wonderful way of saying it. Poor people have big TVs. Rich people have big libraries. Meaning people who rise invest in their mind more than their entertainment. They invest in growth more than distraction. They invest in becoming better, not feeling better for 20 minutes. So how do you fix the silent habit of being casual with money? You give every dollar a job. You decide where it goes before it leaves your hand. Whether it's saving, investing, learning, giving, or spending, you direct your money with intention. A budget is not restriction. A budget is instruction. It tells your money where to go instead of wondering where it went. And remember this, wealth is not built in large leaps. Wealth is built in small, steady behaviors repeated over long periods of time. $10 saved consistently is more valuable than $1,000 saved occasionally. The few understand this. The many do not. Now, once you begin taking control of your money, you'll notice something remarkable. Your confidence grows. Your stress lowers. Your future feels clearer. But money is just one area. There's another silent habit that determines almost everything else. Your environment, the people around you, the associations you allow. Now, the sixth silent habit is one Jim Rohn considered absolutely fundamental. He said, you are the average of the 5 people you spend the most time with. And let me tell you, nothing will shape your life more quietly than the company you keep. Because people don't just influence you loudly. They influence you silently. They influence you through what they normalize, what they expect, what they applaud, what they tolerate, what they excuse. Most people never stop to examine their associations. They spend time with whoever happens to be near them, co-workers, neighbors, old classmates, distant friends, without ever asking the question, is this person pulling me forward or holding me back? And because the influence is subtle, the effects feel harmless at first. But your environment is always working, whether you notice it or not. Jim Rohn used to say, you don't have to fire your friends, but you might have to fire their influence. And he was right, because some people drain your ambition without ever raising their voice. They roll their eyes at your goals. They discourage your ideas. They remind you of past failures. They tell you to be realistic, which is often code for stay like us. They spend their days complaining, criticizing, gossiping, not improving. And even if you don't join them consciously, their mindset begins to rub off. You see, the average person surrounds themselves with people who make them comfortable, but the exceptional surround themselves with people who make them better. There's a big difference. Comfort protects your old self. Growth protects your future self. And if the people closest to you do not challenge your thinking, expand your vision, or elevate your standards, you will eventually inherit their limitations. Let me give you something to think about. It's almost impossible to rise above the expectation of your social circle. If everyone around you sleeps late, it becomes normal. If everyone wastes money, it becomes normal. If everyone complains, it becomes normal. If no one sets goals, it becomes normal. The group sets the thermostat. Most people live at room temperature, not because that's where they belong, but because that's where their environment has settled. The few who change their life understand this truth early. You must choose your associations with the same seriousness you choose your future. And choosing doesn't always mean cutting people off. Sometimes it means adding new people in, adding voices of encouragement, adding minds that think bigger, adding friends who have ambitions, disciplines, habits worth learning from. Jim Rohn gave a simple guideline. Spend less time with those who pull you backward. Spend more time with those who push you forward. Spend most of your time with those living the way you aspire to live. It's a gentle shift, but a powerful one. Because once your environment changes, your habits change. Once your habits change, your identity changes. And once your identity changes, your life follows naturally. Now, after understanding the influence of the people around you, we come to the final silent habit, the one that holds more people back than talent, opportunity, or intelligence ever could. It's the habit that keeps someone average even when they have extraordinary potential. Now, the seventh silent habit, the one that quietly destroys more goals, dreams, and ambitions than any external obstacle, is the habit of living by mood instead of decision. And I want you to listen carefully here, because this one is subtle. Most people don't even realize they're doing it, but it shapes the trajectory of their entire life. Jim Rohn used to say, motivation gets you started. Discipline keeps you going. And that's the problem for most people. They try to build their life on motivation, which is a mood, instead of discipline, which is a decision. They try to do great things only when it feels right, only when the conditions are perfect, only when they're inspired. But life doesn't reward mood. Life rewards discipline. Mood is a visitor. Discipline is a resident. See, the average person wakes up and says, do I feel like it today? And if the answer is no, the decision is no. No workout, no reading, no project, no progress. Their mood becomes their master. Their emotions become their schedule. Their feelings become their strategy. And it keeps them stuck in a loop. Excited one week, discouraged the next, motivated on Monday, exhausted by Wednesday, ready to change in the morning, overwhelmed by the afternoon. Living by mood creates inconsistency. And inconsistency destroys momentum. And without momentum, nothing compacts, nothing grows, nothing accumulates. You restart the same goals year after year because you never stay with them long enough for them to turn into habits. Jim Rohn said, don't let your emotions control you. Learn to control your emotions. And that's the key. The exceptional make decisions in advance. They decide once and manage that decision daily. They don't remake it every morning based on how they feel. They don't ask their mood for permission. They act according to principle, not preference. Let me give you an example. If you decide you're a runner, you don't ask, do I feel like running today? Runners run. If you decide you're a reader, you don't ask, am I in the mood to read tonight? Readers read. If you decide you're someone who saves money, you don't ask, do I feel disciplined this month? Savers save. Mood becomes irrelevant because identity has taken over. And here's the beautiful thing. Once you act beyond your mood long enough, the mood starts catching up. The discipline you once had to force becomes something you feel proud of. The actions you once resisted become natural. The habits you once struggled with become part of your identity. Discipline first, feelings later. Living by decision changes everything. It gives you structure. It gives you clarity. It eliminates negotiation. Your decisions become your compass, not your emotions. And once you start living that way, average becomes impossible, because average is emotional. Exceptional is intentional. So let me give you a simple truth to remember. You don't rise to the level of your mood, you rise to the level of your decisions. And when the decisions are strong, the results are strong. Now that we've uncovered all 7 silent habits, there's one final step, one final shift that brings everything together. Because knowledge without direction is incomplete. Let's bring this home with a clear conclusion, something to help you step out of the average crowd and into the life you were meant to build. So here we are. We've uncovered the 7 silent habits, the habits that look harmless, feel ordinary, and sound innocent, but quietly shape the life you settle for. And maybe now you see something you didn't see before. Maybe you recognize a habit, or 2, or all 7. If you do, don't feel discouraged. Feel grateful. Because awareness is the beginning of change. You can't fix what you can't see. But once you see it, once you shine a light on it, you take back your power. Jim Rohn used to say, success is something you attract by the person you become. And that's really the heart of our conversation today. It isn't about the size of your dream. It isn't about the size of your talent. It isn't even about the size of your opportunities. It's about the size of your habits. Because habits determine direction, and direction determines destiny. Average people don't wake up one morning and decide to be average. They simply never rise above these silent habits. They wait for the perfect time. They learn without acting. They break small promises. They explain instead of execute. They're casual with money. They allow the wrong people to shape their standards. And they let their moods dictate their days. No drama, no explosion, just a quiet drift toward a life they never intended to live. But the exceptional live differently. They look at these habits and say, no more. They draw a line in the sand. They really decide that the past does not have to repeat itself. And the moment they make that decision, everything begins to shift, because life responds to movement. It responds to intention. It responds to responsibility. Let today be that day for you. Not someday, not next month, not when things calm down. Today. Let today be the day you stop living by mood and start living by decision. The day you stop explaining and start executing. The day you stop drifting and start steering. The day you stop settling for average and begin reaching for exceptional. Now remember, change doesn't require perfection. It requires persistence. You don't have to transform your life overnight. You simply have to remove one silent habit at a time and replace it with a new standard. Small disciplines, repeated daily, will do more for your life than bursts of enthusiasm ever could. So ask yourself, what's one silent habit I'm willing to end today? Not 7, just 1. Begin there. Because the moment you honor that decision, you cast a vote for a new identity. And once the identity changes, everything else follows. Jim Rohn would tell you, don't join the crowd that complains. Join the few who commit. And if you do, if you decide, if you act, if you persist, you will look back months from now, years from now, and say, that was the day everything turned. That was the day I stopped being average. Your life will not change by accident. It will change by choice. And today, you choose.